So, does anybody you want to sit? No? You good? There's seats. We got seats. In the same way that we don't count a Torah as a tenth in the minyan at Addis Israel because it's not a human, we don't count a tallis bag as taking a seat. So if that's what's happening right now, pick it up. So one of the great parts about traveling with my family to Clayton, Georgia, to Ramat Darom for Passover every year, at least in my eyes, is the drive. The drive is when I truly experience freedom. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the primary reason is I really enjoy daydreaming. And at most points in my life, I feel like somehow daydreaming is bitul zman, like somehow I'm wasting time. I could be reading something, thinking something serious, helping somebody, doing a mitzvah, taking care of my kids. But once you're in the car, once I'm in the car, I can actually just let myself go into what is essentially a dream state, but with more awareness. And what I like to do is I like to allow the signs of driving down to Georgia drive my daydreams. And the best ones are in North Carolina. So the two signs this year really caught my attention. The first was a gigantic sign that basically said, "Keep calm, lawyer up." And then I had an incredible daydream about the fact, or I think it was probably 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I was driving back to DC with my family from Ramah, and I got pulled over for speeding. I was. And in North Carolina, if you get a speeding ticket from out of state, you can't just send in money. You have to show up in court or hire a lawyer to show up in court for you. And I started thinking, did I ever do that? Penina did that. Then I saw a sign. This is a good one. Well, I don't know. It's good for me. It said, "Heaven or hell, you choose." And I went into a daydream about how I don't believe I should have that much agency. Okay, part of it is I actually want God to choose for me. And then I thought about that Mark Twain quote, "Go to heaven for the climate, hell for the company." I'll choose hell every time. But once I got into the realm of eschatological daydreams, it like turned into like I had like a couple hours of like a flow that I actually didn't write down the details of, but wrote down the flow afterwards. Once I got into the space of heaven, hell, Messiah, and all the stuff that those signs bring up when you're driving through North Carolina and Georgia, I thought about that this incredible tradition that my mom had. My mom beat cancer 2 out of 3 times, which is not nearly enough. But the first 2 times that the doctors told her she would not survive, after each and every chemo treatment, she would go home and plant another flower in the garden. To the point where by the end of the second cancer, before the third, she had a garden full of flowers that she planted right after feeling her body more diminished than it could have ever been. It was an absolutely stunning garden, and I can't remember one flower in it. And I thought, like, who does that? And then I thought about the teaching in Avot to Rabbi Nachman of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who would walk around with a seed in his hand. And when people would come along, Vayomru lach, Harei lach HaMashiach. Yo, the Messiah's coming. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai would take the seed in his hand and he would go plant it. And then he would greet the Messiah. And I thought, who can face life and death in that kind of way? But to plant first and confront second. Or maybe the planting is the confronting. And then the moment I started thinking about Mashiach, I thought about, and planting towards it, I thought about, and I've spoken about this a few times, that moment in which a number of us, I was there twice in Kfar Aza with Chen Kotler, and she had a stand right between the border of Gaza and the smoke over Gaza and the teen village, which had been utterly destroyed and will never be rebuilt. And it's like you're between the sea and the Pharaoh, and it just feels like caught, which is how the residents of Kfar Aza feel. And she said, don't forget, please don't forget, I need something important for you. I need for each one of you, lahashrish, to plant, to root, shalom, belev shelcha. I need you to plant the seeds of peace in your heart. I don't know when we will need it. I don't know when we will be ready for it, but I know that we won't be who we need to be if we haven't held onto it or planted it somehow. And the moment I started thinking about Chen Kotler and her incredible bravery and courage, I started thinking about where I was going, which was to Ramat Darom. And I knew that I would be there with hundreds of people, of which 70% of them have watched, like myself, Hirsch grow up for over a decade. I studied Talmud with his parents. He was my kid's counselor. And I thought, what will it be like to be in that space? How will we reconcile that? And as many of you know, I was in that space. Well, now you know, I was in that space on Wednesday when the news started filtering through the synagogue at Camp Ramah. And there was first a collective exhale. He's alive. And quickly afterwards, a collective inhale. What's happening? And then I remembered this poem by Alden Solovey about Elijah. I went straight to Elijah, the prophet who will announce salvation and peace. He said, "Will not visit your Pesach Seder this year. Don't fill the cup, don't waste the wine. The prophet is exhausted, pleading with the heavens for the hostages, for the displaced, the grieving, the lost. Find hope," he said, "in your own hands, in deeds of repairing the world, acts of loving kindness. Elijah is not coming to your Seder. The work of healing the world and bringing redemption, he has left to us." He has left to us. And that made me think of a sugya that I had taught to the board a few nights before. I went on a deep dive into Elijah stories in the Talmud this year. They are an unbelievable genre of stories. I will definitely have a class at some point in the future on all of them. But this story is deeply uncomfortable, let's just put it. Elijah apparently was a regular in Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi's Beit Midrash. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi was the compiler of the Mishnah. We called him Rabbi Yehuda the Prince. He was a big deal. But Elijah, the prophet, when he came back down to earth from the heavens, he would go to Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi's yeshiva and he would study there. Except one Rosh Chodesh, he didn't show up. He came in late. And the moment he came in late, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi said to him, "My time a nigale. Why are you so late today?" Imagine saying to Elijah the prophet, let's not assume you were doing something important. Amarle, Odu kimna la'Abrahamu mishana yado mitzale umagninale. I had to wake up Abraham. I had to wash off his hands. I had to allow him time to pray. And then after that, I needed to put him back to sleep. And then I did that for Yitzchak and I did that for Yaakov. And by the time I got through all of them, I was running late. What can you do? Heaven is busy. To which Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, he was very smart. He compiled the Mishnah. He had a really good question. Why don't you do them all at once? That's what he said. He said, "Veluk minhu bahade hadade." Do it all together. And he said, I can't do them all together because if I wake all three of them up together and allow them to pray together, their prayers will be so potent that they will bring Mashiach before his time. Umaite leila Mashiach below zimne. That obviously in my daydream went a lot faster than it just went for you. But I immediately went to Tractate Sanhedrin where there's a couple pages on the time of the Mashiach and when that will actually happen. Because when is it not time for Mashiach to come and change the course of this unbelievably broken and beautiful world? What does that mean? You don't want Mashiach to come, but you have the power to bring Mashiach. Are you kidding me? So in Sanhedrin, there's actually a debate. It's sort of like a three-pronged debate as to when Mashiach is coming. One is we bring Mashiach through our good deeds. We do tshuva, we bring Mashiach. We are all righteous. We bring Mashiach. Or my favorite one, Mashiach will come ad shehu kol hashi'arim kulam shkulim, when all of the measurements, the weights and the measures by which civil society is determined are equal. Mashiach will come when we actually figure out how to treat people, b'tselem Elohim, in their divine image, equally. Then there's another thread in rabbinic literature which suggests Mashiach will come when we need Mashiach most, which, of course, is when gasei haruach me Yisrael, when the arrogant become too much for us. Mashiach will come and create humility once again. Or another one, shetikale malchut hazala me Yisrael, when we are no longer, or when we are subjugated by other countries to the extent that we need redemption. Or I wouldn't say my favorite one, but the one in which there are poor and hungry people everywhere and there's not even enough fish to feed a few of them. Which is to say, Mashiach will come when we need Mashiach most because we can't take care of the vulnerable, or we won't take care of the vulnerable anymore. And I think, are we not ready for that? Are we not living in a place, a space, a city in which we're ready for something to come and actually help us transcend our own inability to prioritize? Where's Mashiach? And the answer is Mashiach's going to come when God wants Mashiach to come. And Elijah's waiting for God's word before Elijah wakes up Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to pray together. But Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, again, he's very, very smart, and he says, well, if in heaven you've got Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov who could do that, do we have anybody here on this earth who, if we put them together, their prayers can overwhelm heaven such that Mashiach can come? And Elijah says, yeah, we got that person. His name is Rabbi Chia. And Rabbi Chia, like Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who compiled the Mishnah, was thought to have composed the Tosefta, a contemporary compilation of rabbinic texts. And so Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, in this sugya, in Bava Metzia, declares a fast day. In antiquity, when there's a fast day, you don't have one person leading prayers, you have three people leading prayers. He calls Rabbi Chia and his two sons. They get up, they start to lead the prayers, and when they say Mashiv HaRuach, the wind starts blowing, and now you know game is on. Morid HaGeshem, rain starts falling. What bracha are we waiting for? Mechayeh HaMeitim, the resurrection of the dead. It's a good sign of Mashiach. And the moment he says, Mechayeh HaMeitim, the earth starts grumbling, rolling, moving, as if an earthquake was coming. And the Talmud, it ends that scene. It takes us back up to heaven where the angels are annoyed. They're saying, who is telling people on earth our secrets? Who told them how to get the Mashiach to leave heaven and go to earth? And they said, Elijah did. They said, get him up here. And they gave him 60 lashes of fire. They punished him. Mashiach below Zimne, don't bring the Messiah before the Messiah's time. So Elijah goes back down to the prayer service. That was like one of those moments. They're still at Mechayeh HaMeitim. So all of that happened. It's like a really good scene. And before they can finish, he comes back, but I don't even know how to fully describe this. He comes back, Ata idme lahu kaduba denora. He came back like a fiery bear. It sounds like Chagadia. He came back like a fiery bear, and he distracted them so that they couldn't finish davening, and the story ends. And at least one commentary, the Ben Ish Chai's commentary, suggests that the allegory that's happening here is the people's hearts were simply not ready for Mashiach. We have not trained our hearts for what's next. such that we will be ready to receive redemption in that form before it's time. And a bear, in this case a cocaine bear, thank you Oz for that, but like Oz they knew that, but like they stole that from us too. That movie was ours. A bear is known for ripping out people's hearts, and so the allegory is it went the bear to distract their hearts and to remind them that they aren't yet ready, that we don't have hearts ready to receive a Mashiach. And that, again, this is all my drive still, and that is when I thought of what are we ready? Are our hearts ready for what's next? We want what's next. We want out of this. How many times have I heard enough already? And then I wonder, are we ready for what's next? Such that our hearts are prepared to greet it, such that Mashiach will want to stay. And I don't think we are. I thought of the Rasha at the Seder, and this teaching by Rav Asher Weiss, it's a Haredi Rosh Yeshiva in Israel. And he talked about the Rasha and that last line, Ilu hayasham lo hayanigal. If the Rasha would have been in Egypt, he would not have been redeemed. We would have left him in Egypt. First of all, it's ridiculous. That wouldn't have happened. I don't want any of us to imagine that when Yisrael said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will learn all together, that we actually think they all thought that. We know how much strife there was in the Israelite camp. History is told through the victors always, and in this case, when we say all of the camp agreed, even at Sinai, don't tell me there weren't people who were still stuck in Egypt. But Rav Asher Weiss says, Aval hu lo sham elakan. He is not there. He's actually here, sitting at your table. She'elotav kashot. His questions will be difficult. V'gam chuvotenu lo kasheh uvoteh. And gam, the way in which we answer her, will have to be difficult sometimes, maybe even blunt. Aval lehitalem limenu enenu rishaim. But to turn away from the Rasha, no. But we do, because our hearts aren't ready to actually deal with the complexity that is living as a Jew today, right now, in a Jewish community that doesn't quite know what to do with itself most of the time. The Rasha is not going to be left in Egypt, literally. But it is true, at least in my mind, that many of us live with hearts hardened over such that we are still in an Egypt of some sorts, even if our physical bodies have been taken out. Egypt is no longer a physical place. Egypt is an emotional place, a psychological place, a spiritual place that doesn't allow us to be in the world fully present in moments when we need to be. I had a conversation with one of my colleagues a couple days ago at camp, and one of the things we talked about, especially over the last 6 months, is how often we are shown appreciation for things we say that people agree with, and how I can't remember a time, neither could he, and then neither could she, who we were sitting with. I remember one time where we received appreciation for being able to say something that somebody disagreed with. Now, it strikes me that if we can only offer appreciation to somebody when they say something we already agree with, who is it that we appreciate? Say it. Ourselves. That is precisely what we were trying to leave in Egypt. A human at the center, and not a community or a God. I do that more than anybody I know. It's important for you to know this. I am quick to show appreciation for people that agree with me. I am not quick to say, I disagree with what you said, and I appreciate the hell out of you for saying it. But I wish that I would be, because what an unhealthy way to be in community, to only see ourselves in other people. If we are only looking for mirrors and never for windows, our hearts will not delayer to the point in which we will be ready to receive that next stage of our communal life that we want. We have a lot of forces pushing against us right now from the outside. But the heart work of figuring out how to make this stronger will require delayering the hearts and more windows, fewer mirrors. We need each other even when we disagree with one another. We need to appreciate one another more than anything else when we disagree with one another. And then I got to camp. Shabbat shalom.